Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Oh, Captain, my captain.
I'm telling you straight, it's my way or the highway.
Oh, command me, Lord. Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Tell me something, my friend. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? I always ask that of all my prey. I just like the sound of it.
I'll have what she's having.
You have chosen wisely.
It reminds us of all that once was good. And it could be again.
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious...
You're listening to the 30-something Movie Podcast. Classic movies, 30 years in the making. That's right, you are listening to the 30-something Movie Podcast. This is it. It once more, dear friends, once more, we jump into the podcast airwaves. I don't even know if they have... Do they have airwaves? You're listening to it on Wi-Fi, so I'm sure there's airwaves. Anyway, it's the end of 1989. We spent years... Well, let me rephrase that. Pat spent years waiting for 1989. And our first episode out of the gate, Batman. It took him a long time to get there, and it was amazing. And all the other stuff from 1989, well, I don't want to say all the other stuff. Most of the other stuff from 1989 was amazing. And now it's a little bittersweet. It seems like 89 has flown by completely. This is our last movie of 1989, but even more importantly, dear podcasting friends, it's the last movie of the 80s. We have reached, when we started this thing, I think we talked about it one of our last episodes, when we started this thing, I don't think that we had any idea that we would probably get this far to where we'd actually move into something other than the 80s. When we started this, it was, hey, we love 80s movies. Let's talk 80s movies. Sure. And then we started from there, 84, 85. So we've been doing this, I think we talked to one of the last times, I believe we're looking at close to 5 years that we've been doing this. So I don't know that we really truly ever thought, we joked that we'd get to like The Phantom Menace or The Matrix or movies like that. But we're here, friends. So it is, as I said, we are episode number 278. This one is Say Anything. It's going to be our last one for 89, last one for the 80s total. We may come back and talk 80s movies in the future. I'm sure we usually do every once in a while, kind of looking back on some stuff. So I'm sure this is not the end of the 80s for us. So you will, I'm sure, hear more about some 80s content going forward. But we will be primarily 90s. That also means a change in our podcast logo and change in the intro. And so we're gonna do it up for 1990, moving into that new decade. So haven't changed the music yet. I still like the background music for our intro. So thank you to the Super Sigil. I believe is the artist. I had those notes right in front of me and then they disappeared. But we don't often say thank you enough. I'm sure that person has never heard this being used on our podcast before. I do have a note up as a way of giving credit to that. I did pull it off of one of those websites where you're free to use the music however you'd like, but do like to give credit where credit's due. And the music that we have used for many episodes is due to that creator. So I think I believe Super Sigil was the name of the creator for that one. There is a credit on our website, so please go to our website and check that out there, and you can find some of their other music that they've created as well. That all being said, you can probably tell by now I am by myself this time around, and actually because I have no time at all, because I now have a real person job. Not to say teachers aren't real people, but I'm now no longer on a teacher schedule, so I'm back to work, and I'm trying to record this in the free moments that I have during my lunch break and things like that. So I am recording it in my car, so we may not have the same audio quality that we typically do, or that we try to have most of our episodes, but just giving you a heads up, it is a cold and gray Chicago morning. I'm sure somewhere a little baby child was born in the ghetto. In the ghetto. Okay, that is all the singing you're going to hear from me this episode, maybe. But it is very cold, it is very gray, and it may last us the rest of our lives. It is currently snowing. It is the day before New Year's Eve. It's kind of gloomy. However, I'm here with all of you. I'm going to talk about a John Cusack movie. I am a big John Cusack fan. I had never seen this one before, so I don't know how that makes me a big John Cusack fan if I've never seen this one, but bits and pieces, but never the whole thing altogether. And Ione, Skye, I mean, come on. Quintessential girl next door. What's not to love? So we're going to get into that in just a second. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been with us all year this year, who's been with us this entire stretch as we've done our 80s movies and now moving on into the 90s. Just thank you all so much. We're not one of those big podcasts that, has multiple tens of thousands of downloads every episode and that kind of stuff. But we really appreciate everybody who's out there listening. We appreciate all the feedback that we get from everyone, all the interaction. It's been so much fun to get to know some of you. And, if we were a much bigger podcast and, I had a table at the local comic book convention, like some of these big deals, and I would love to meet other people that are listening to our show, but I know our audience is not as big as those. So if you have not reached out, I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for Patreon or any of that stuff right now. We do have one, but I rarely, throw that out there. But I would love to hear from more of you. I know we've got a bunch of listeners out there, and you may not have interacted with the show yet. So I'm not asking for anything other than we'd love to know who you are. We'd love to talk with you more. We'd love to hear from you on our voicemail. We'd love to interact with you on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. This is for the love of the game. So we're not really looking for anything else other than other people who love movies as much as we do, maybe want to talk about movies a little bit. We just want to hear from more of you. So I do want to give a shout out real quick to our Oklahoma contingent down there in Oklahoma. Thank you guys all so much. You guys interact with us regularly. And I'm going to forget somebody, but I know James, Jason, Tristan, a whole bunch of people down there in Oklahoma that interact with us pretty regularly. And I do want to give a shout out because James and Jason are starting up their own podcast. I think they mentioned to me just today, I think I got a message from James saying that they were starting up a podcast. They've been talking about it since March of this year, and they're ready to go. They've got some preview episodes out, and I think the first episode may be coming out in the new year. It's a great concept. They are taking two things from childhood, whether it be a TV show, movie, album, whatever it might be, and they are debating which one is the best. And I believe their podcast is called Surely You Can't Be Serious Podcast. Great title. You may miss that phrase now because that's not going to be the opening of our podcast anymore. I'm a little sad, but hopefully we can get something that is just as enjoyable and fits in with the theme of our now 90s podcast going forward after today. But I listened to the preview episode. This is going to be an awesome podcast. So if you want to hear people, a friendly argument and debate talking about things that we love from our childhood, the first episode is which album is the better Michael Jackson 80s album? Is it Bad or is it Thriller? I could weigh in right now. I'm going to weigh in right now. I'm going to say Thriller. Now, Bad, great album, but I got to go Thriller. As a kid, I had that song memorized. I watched that music video religiously. So the irony, religiously. But even just that song alone, like that's one of those times where when you give me a couple of different options and I look at them, it may just come down to one song. And for me, growing up as a kid, I can't separate child John and his love for Thriller from the rest of that album and everything else. And there's still great stuff in the rest of that album, but just, I can't, for me, that's pretty much it. Like that's the deal breaker right there is Thriller has Thriller. And some other great songs too, but yeah, so that would be, I would throw in my 2 cents if I was going to, throw in for my portion of sharing in that debate. But sounds like it's going to be a really fun podcast. They're going to bring out that first episode, I think, here in the new year. So go check it out. Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast from our let's say it again, Oklahoma contingent folks down there in the South. And, good luck to them on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to, I think I messaged them back earlier today and said, I'm looking forward to becoming your Illinois contingent for your podcast. So thank you guys for sharing that with us, and good luck on the podcast. I hope you have as much fun as we've had doing our podcast as well. All right. Let's see. Again, like I said, I'm going solo today, so I don't have Bo or Pat or anybody else with me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Say Anything, and episode probably won't be as long as some of our other ones since it's just me gabbing. But very, very quickly, spoiler alert, we spoil the movies we talk about. I'm going to talk about Say Anything. If I mention another movie's title, I might, within the course of being just monologuing here, might say something related to that movie too. So just be aware. We just let the conversation flow freely. Beyond this point, we don't usually say spoiler alert. So just be aware of that. iTunes reviews. Like I said before, we don't really ask for anything. If you want to interact more with us, we would love to. We'd love to get to know you better and talk talk more about movies, 80s stuff, 90s stuff, whatever you want to talk about. But the other thing, too, is iTunes reviews. If you have not left us an iTunes review, we would really appreciate that. That helps us kind of move up in the charts, allows other people to find our show, and then that way we can interact with more people that love this stuff. So as I said before, we're here for the love of the game. We love movies. We love talking about movies. We love interacting with people. It's positivity. It's communication with other people. That's all we're looking for. Like, we're not looking for Twitter followers. We're not even looking for downloads on our podcast. But if we do get more people listening, we get more people we get to interact with. So that's really all we're looking for. So iTunes reviews, leave us a 5-star review if you think we deserve a 5-star review. And let us know what you're enjoying, what you're not enjoying, and we'll take it from there. But yeah, that's another place you can kind of interact with us. And then also visit our website. 30podcast.com is our website. You can find all of our past episodes, our voicemail line, the credit for the music I talked about earlier that I can't remember off the top of my head. But we've had different polls that we've put up there to ask questions. We have links to our Letterboxd page, to all of our other social media outlets that we use, Facebook, Twitter, all those different things. We're usually 30 Podcast on all those if you go looking for them. But visit our website, 30podcast.com. That's got all the different ways you can interact with us. All right. Well, let's just jump on into Say Anything. So Say Anything came out on the 14th of April, 1989, was rated PG-13 with a runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes, directed by Cameron Crowe, who also did Jerry Maguire, Almost Famous, and Vanilla Sky. Polly Platt was the producer. She died in 2011. She also did Broadcast News and The War of the Roses. Writer was also Cameron Crowe. He also wrote Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Jerry Maguire, and Almost Famous, and Vanilla Sky. Cinematography done by Laszlo Kovacs, who died in 2007, also did Ghostbusters, Multiplicity, and Miss Congeniality. Bunch of great movies there. Can't wait to do Multiplicity. Like, that's probably one of my favorite movies of the 90s. Like, it is a quintessentially 90s movie. It's good stuff. It's Michael Keaton. It's a lot of fun. We'll get there. So, music was done by Ann Dudley and Richard Gibbs. Dudley did The Crying Game and The Full Monty. Gibbs has done some episodes of The Simpsons and the movie 10 Things I Hate About You. Budget was $16 million. Box office was $21.5 million. The Rotten Tomatoes critics give it a 98%. Rotten Tomatoes audience gives it an 85%. IMDb gives it a 73%. Letterboxd a 72%. And CinemaScore a B+. Starring John Cusack as Lloyd Dobler. He was in High Fidelity, Grosse Pointe Blank. Ione Skye as Diane Court. She was in River's Edge and Fever Pitch. Let's say that correctly. John Mahoney, the great John Mahoney, who passed away. Oh, I didn't write it down on here. I think that was either just last year or a couple years ago that he passed away. He played James Court, Diane's father. He was in Moonstruck and the TV series Frasier, among many other things, stage and TV and movies. Lily Taylor played Corey Flood. She was in The Conjuring and Mystic Pizza. Amy Brooks played DC. He was in Broadcast News and I'll Do Anything. Pamela Adlon was Rebecca. She was in Grease 2 and Bumblebee. Jason Gould played Mike Cameron. He was in The Prince of Tides and Boy's Life 3. Lauren Dean played Joe. He was in Gattaca and The Enemy of the State. Glenn Walker Harris Jr. played Jason Dobler. He was in Wild at Heart and General Hospital. Jeremy Piven played Mark. He was in Entourage and Serendipity. Bebe Neuwirth played Mrs. Evans. She was in Jumanji and Cheers. Eric Stoltz played Valere. He was in Pulp Fiction and Some Kind of Wonderful. Joan Cusack played Constance Dobler. She was in In and Out and Working Girl. Here is the trailer, and we'll be back in just a moment.
I'm going to take out Diane Court.
Diane Court doesn't go out. She's a brain.
Trapped in the body of a game show hostess.
We don't want to see you get hurt.
I want to get hurt. So it's Lloyd, and let's go out.
Oh, thanks, but I'm busy.
So you're Monumentally busy?
Well, not monumentally.
Hi, Lloyd Dalmer, sir. I'm an athlete, so I rarely drink. Kickboxing. You ever heard of kickboxing? Sport of the future? I can see by your face, no. My point is you can relax because your daughter will be safe with me for the next 7 to 8 hours, sir.
Hi.
Maybe Diane Court really likes Lloyd. If you were Diane Court, would you honestly fall for Lloyd?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your plans for the future? Spend as much time possible with Diane?
No, really.
I'm totally and completely serious. I'm not sure if I should say, I just want to tell you that...
No, we don't have to say it.
How do you know what I'm going to say?
I don't know what you're going to say.
I was just going to tell you that I love you. I said it.
I know.
I gave her my heart and she gave me a pen.
Lloyd, man, no baby's worth it, dude.
All you gotta do is find a girl that looks just like her and then dump her, man.
You guys know so much about women. How come you're here at, like, a gas and sip on a Saturday night? No women anywhere.
My choice, man. That's right, man. Conscious choice.
I'm a guy. I have pride.
Oh, you're not a guy. No, the world is full of guys. Be a man.
In your eyes, the light, the heat. I am complete. In your eyes, the light, the heat. Oh, I wanna be that complete. I wanna touch the light, the heat I see in your eyes.
John Cusack, Ione, Skye, Say Anything.
Okay, we're back. All right. So, first off, we typically kind of go through, so I'm going to kind of ask myself these questions as well. So we typically kind of go through and ask ourselves some questions about the movie. So first question I usually ask everybody is, how does this movie make you feel? I love this movie. This is a great movie. This is a true relationship movie that it's like the 80s have grown up. I think it has some of the... It starts off seeming like it has some of the trappings of an 80s high school romance movie, but then there are ways in which it kind of turns that on its head. Like it surprises you with certain things in this movie. And that was something that, as I was watching it, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be your typical, high school teen comedy romance movie from the 80s, and it's going to be very similar to one of those others. It's going to be like a 16 Candles. It's going to be like a one of these, but it's not. And there's a lot of ways in which it's not. One in particular is they've graduated high school and they're going off to college, or they're in that in between time, which almost makes me think it's kind of an interesting look at it coming at the end of the 80s, that we're graduating from the 80s, we're moving on to something else, we're kind of moving away. I think towards the end of the 80s, I think we've started to see it in the last couple of years of our podcast, where we're moving away from the way the movies were done previously, like the Fast Times at Ridgemont High, the 16 Candles, that type of stuff, a lot of the John Hughes, and we're kind of moving into something just a little bit different. I think it's also because of Cameron Crowe. I think a lot of his movies, you have the characters are maybe even more grown up than what we would see the characters acting like in some of the 80s teen movies, but it's definitely something different. So when I started watching this, I had seen bits and pieces of this movie here or there. I was obviously aware of the iconic holding up the boombox scene, but had not seen this movie in its entirety, and I really enjoyed this movie. John Cusack, I've always liked John Cusack as an actor. There's something about him as an actor that I think I really enjoy, because he's not over the top. Like, he's one of those actors that he can emote, and he can, with a look, he can give you an entire range of what he's thinking and what he's feeling without even saying anything. And that's from when he was young on up until, even as an older adult now, in some of the movies that I've seen with him. Runaway Jury was a great one with Gene Hackman and Rachel Weisz several years ago that my wife and I have watched over and over again. Really like that movie. But I really like him as an actor. He's I even hesitate sometimes to call him a subdued actor, but he's not over the top. And that's one of the things I really like about him, is that it seems like, to me, as an actor, he can do so much. Well, that whole idea of a look or just a glance or whatever, and he does so much with it. So that's something I really like about him. He's not a caricature in this movie. He kind of dresses like a slacker, and he doesn't really have a plan for his life. However, he is very empathetic. He is very thoughtful. He doesn't look like you would expect. So I think that kind of, it throws Diane's father for a loop just a little bit. And I think he's expecting something different. And I think Diane underestimates him too, because, his looks don't necessarily match up with his attitude, which I think is what distinguishes this from a typical 80s teen movie, is that typically you had very stereotypical groups within the 80s teen movies. This one, not so much. And now you've also got the beautiful Ione Skye, just stunning valedictorian, who's also a bit of a nerd and a bit of an outcast. So she mixes a whole bunch of different stereotypes, those high school stereotypes. And I think that's maybe one of the messages of this movie too, is that if you're in high school watching this, that this movie is a way of teaching you, look, your group, your little niche, your little clique that you were in high school, once you get past high school, really those don't matter anymore. Like, that's not even a thing very much. And as someone who has taught middle school kids, and I've taught high school kids, and I have, an almost teenager of my own, that's a hard thing to get across to them. Like, when they're that age, and I remember too, when you're that age, that's what life is. And you don't see anything else beyond the teenage bubble that you're living in, for most. And I think this movie does a really great job of just trying to show you, hey, look, there's more to life than this. People are three-dimensional. They're not these two-dimensional characters that we see in movies sometimes. And that's one of the things I really like, and why this movie it makes me feel good. Watching this movie is about real people and real relationships. That does not at all denigrate John Hughes, because I think he does a great job at that too. But some of the other 80s teen movies, I still love those. Like, I'm not downplaying those at all. I'm just saying this is taking a different stance on that maybe this is a little bit more sophisticated while still remaining simple. This is a little bit more of a sophisticated take on the teen romance movie. So John Cusack, awesome. Love him. John Mahoney, I had the two Johns. John Mahoney, also great in this movie. Throughout the entire movie, just jumping back and forth from, is this guy a jerk, or is this guy actually okay? Did he really steal these things? Or, I think that up front, a lot of 80s movies would have the villain, if you have the villain who's stealing money or wanting to steal somebody's property or whatever, I'm thinking of like the Goonies and some of the other stuff, it's almost a caricature of a businessman. In this one, he's actually a nice guy. Like, I don't think that the dad, with a very few exceptions in this movie, I don't think the dad, John Mahoney, ever stops being a nice dad. A nice guy, good father, even though you find out that he has, stolen this money from these people. Personality-wise, he's still a nice person, except for the whole stealing money from people thing. He even has a rationale for it that, it's a horrible thing that he did, but if you're looking at it from his perspective, you can kind of see that, he almost felt as if he was just giving himself a tip from these people. Now, it's a horrible, deplorable thing that he did, but I don't think there's ever a point in this movie where I truly felt like he was a villain. Was he always completely honest? No. Did he always act appropriately? No. However, he was not villainous, where I think a lot of 80s movies, dads or businessmen or things like that, kind of come across as either oafish or villainous, and he is neither one. So that was the other thing I really kind of appreciated about this movie, is that he, it was a real three-dimensional character. It wasn't a caricature. Ione Skye. How could you not? Now, I didn't see this movie as a teenager or as a kid. How could you not have kind of a crush on Ione Skye? She is, especially in this movie, she is, she's got kind of the girl next door attitude about her and the personality. She is ridiculously smart in this movie. She's beautiful. It's basically like, this is almost like the perfect example of the girl that you'd want to meet. If you were a high school guy and you were looking for a girl, this would be like, you've won the jackpot. Now, in a bunch of other 80s movies, like I've said before, I think a lot of times the guys go for the cute girl. They go for the cute girl. They go for the looks. In this movie, it's more than that. It's, especially Lloyd, he knows all about her. He knows that she's smart. And is she good looking? Yes. But to him, that's only part of it. And I think that's a bit of a shift, too, from some of the 80s movies. Now, I'm not saying all did it that way, but, I think it's definitely noticeable in this one. So as we, just kind of start and go through a little bit of the plot here, too, as we're kind of talking, but that's kind of how this movie makes me feel. It's happy. Just happy to be watching it. Happy that it seems like real relationships happening right in front of you. I believe, and I don't have this right in front of me right now, but I believe in the early 2000s, Entertainment Weekly voted this as the best movie romance. I don't remember. I'll have to look it up and see. But something like the best movie romance, and in one of their top 50, top 50 teen romance movies of all time or something like that? Whatever it was, but yeah, and I wouldn't have a problem believing that. Like, I think the ups and downs of this movie are realistic for a relationship of this kind, and how things turn out in the end. Love the ending of the movie too. That was great. We'll get there in a minute, but yeah, no, I really liked pretty much everything about this movie, from Lloyd's friends to the ups and downs of the relationship, the it's on again, it's off again, that kind of stuff, and just a lot of fun to watch. Sometimes I'll ask the guys who related to these movies, what are you going to remember about this movie? And obviously the iconic scene with the boombox when he's holding it over his head, trying to get her attention, playing the song. I think some of the other scenes in particular, when he's talking on the phone in the phone booth in the rain, and he says, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but it was, I gave her my heart and she gave me a pen. I thought that was a great one. Just some of the different scenes where you see him reacting, like when he's walking away from Diane's house and the dad looks out the window and he's just kind of like cheering in the streets. You just fist pump, just jumping up and down. The different scenes where he's there with his nephew, kickboxing. It's the sport of the future. And, almost every scene with John Cusack in it. The way he's helping out everybody at the party, where he kind of becomes, and he's not upset about it, but he kind of becomes the key master, and he's holding everybody's keys, and it's like, he's probably done this before, because he's a genuinely nice guy, and he's somebody that'll look out for other people. So that was a lot of fun. As I think about the plot of this movie itself, as we kind of go through some of that, obviously he's living with, he's just graduated high school. He's living with his sister, and she's a single mother, and he doesn't really have, he doesn't have an outlook on life. He's going to keep his options open. He kind of has some ideas on what he wants to do. He wants to do something with kickboxing, but other than that, he doesn't really have a plan. Whereas on the flip side, you've got Diane and her father, who, they have planned everything to a T. So you get the sense that they are polar opposites of each other. And the opposites attract idea, that you would not necessarily expect someone who has planned their life as much as she has and as her father has, to go for somebody like Lloyd, who doesn't necessarily have a plan. At the same time, you do get the sense that she is feeling a little like all of her planning maybe for naught. Like, she doesn't really necessarily know what she wants to do, despite the fact that they have this plan, and what did she really get out of all of it? So that's probably why somebody like Lloyd would be attractive, even though at first she turns him down when he gives her a call. What I really like too is the whole thing with her and her father, is they were kind of planning everything out. Like, there were a few times where I saw that and I was like, that's a bit of an extreme father-daughter relationship there, that, they've got this much stuff planned out and they tell each other everything. I mean, everything. That's, could I see talking about some of those things with my daughter? No, not right now. She's only 9. But some of that was a little awkward. I was like, well, it's maybe a little bit too open, but maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, that the whole thing where they've planned everything out, and it was just, there wasn't a lot of angst in this movie at least at the beginning, and that was something I really appreciated. Was everybody was just, and to fit the title, Say Anything, everybody was just, fairly open with each other. Lloyd was open about what he wanted up front with her, that he just wanted to spend as much time with her as he could. He knew she was going off and doing her thing, but he just wanted to spend some time with her. And she was open with her father, and for the most part, her father was open with her about things. And, I think that was a refreshing change to some other movies that we've seen, where it's just everybody's keeping secrets from each other, and that's what drives the plot. That doesn't have to drive the plot. I mean, it does drive the plot of most CW TV shows, and most of the, I think Smallville for almost 10 years. That's what drove the plot. But it doesn't need to. And I think that was something that was refreshing about this movie, is that that's not how the plot was driven. The plot was driven by two people who are genuinely interested in each other and then ultimately love each other, and the conflicts that come in between them and how they're going to try to resolve those things. So he does get her to go with him to a party, and that kind of surprises everybody, because it's like, whoa, Lloyd is with Diane, like she's the superstar, and he's a nice guy, but he's kind of a slacker in comparison. So I think it kind of surprised everybody that they would be going together. But then she slowly starts to see all the different things that he's doing. While he came there with her to the party, he's still a genuinely nice guy who seems to care for other people. He takes on the role of the keymaster, and people, like random people from all kinds of different cliques and groups, will come up to him, and they know him, and nobody hates him. Like it's everybody. He's one of those guys. If you knew one of those people in high school, guy or girl, you probably knew somebody like that it didn't matter which group you were in, didn't matter if you were a nerd or a jock or a goth or whatever the groups might have been when you were in high school. You knew someone that kind of transcended all those groups. That everybody, it was kind of like the peacemaker of the high school, that the person who was the one that could just kind of walk through different groups, and nobody had a problem with this person. Everybody was fine with them, maybe not best friends, but you still, you respected that person because they were just a genuinely nice person. There wasn't anything, if much, to hate about that person. And in high school, I think that takes some doing to be that person. And I think Diane figures out pretty quickly that that's who Lloyd is. And I think she wants to, she definitely wants something like that for herself, because she's been planning, and she's been working towards this plan pretty much her entire life, and I think she's just tired at that point of the plan, at least is what it seems. Then you get the whole plot of her dad being in trouble for stealing money from the senior home that he's working at, and you do spend a pretty decent portion of the movie wondering if it's really true, that he's such a nice guy. Like you wouldn't see him doing this, and he wasn't a cackling villain, so you didn't see any of that stuff. And then when you finally find out, no, yeah, actually he did this, he still is not a bad guy. As I said before, he doesn't come across as a villain. He's done something illegal. He's done something wrong. He's going to go to jail for it. And that fractures the relationship. It almost seems like beyond repair between him and his daughter, who had a very open relationship before. But it's obviously he did something very wrong, and he kept it from her, and it probably almost destroyed everything for them, but at the very least, it very much damaged their relationship. And she ends up finding some hidden cash at their house, and that he says it was for her, and I believe it. Like, I believe that he says that was all for her. I don't always necessarily believe that he was keeping that money for himself, even though they had a nice house and everything else. It genuinely seemed to me that he was doing this as a father to set up his daughter for the best life she could possibly have, which again keeps him from looking like a villain. Did something horribly wrong, but he doesn't come across villainous. And at this point, they've also, Lloyd and Diane have kind of broken up as well. And so there's a little bit of a back and forth there, and he's very distraught because he gave his, Lloyd is one of those people that just loves with their whole heart, like, 100, and to use the sports numbering, 110%. He gave 110% of his heart to this girl, and she broke it. And so he was just devastated by this. And I love the part where she comes back to kind of reconcile with him at the gym, and he's got the bloody nose, and she's saying, "But I do need you, and I do love you," and he's at first he's not believing it, and you can tell he's kind of bloody nose, and he's all sweaty and everything else, and he's a little bit out of it. And I think he had just gotten kicked in the face, if I remember right, and because she walked in and kind of surprised him. And then she says the line, I think she says something like, "I love you, and how many times do I have to tell you?" One more would be nice. And at that point, he loves her, and he's loved her this entire movie. And he was so heartbroken that you knew that if she came back to him, he would take her back in a heartbeat, just because he was dedicated to her. And I love that line. That's one of my other favorite lines and moments in the movie. And another time where John Cusack does not have to overact or do anything extreme. All he's got to say is, when she says, "I love you, how many times do I have to tell you?" One more would be nice. It's a great line in the movie. And it's a great moment. And it totally sums up the type of romantic movie this is. I would hesitate to call this a romantic comedy. I don't think it is. There are some comedic moments, but I think that would sell this movie short to call it a romantic comedy. Eventually, her father is put in prison. Lloyd is actually the one that ends up visiting him and bringing a letter and telling the father that he is going to go with Diane. She's got her trip over to England, and he's actually going to go with her. And her father is not happy about that. Ultimately, Diane does show up. She does forgive her father, and she and Lloyd end up leaving to go to England together. He still really doesn't have too much of a plan, but he just knows that his plan is to be with her. He needs to be with her. And so wherever she's going, that's where he needs to be. And then you get the whole scene at the very end where she's afraid of flying, just terrified of flying. And he is doing everything he can to just ease her mind. And there's just the tension of what's going to happen next to them. What is their next step in life? They're going to go off to England. What is the rest of their life going to be like? You're not going to find out, because this is a movie about them right now at this moment in their lives, but they've got their whole lives ahead of them. Maybe they go to England and maybe something happens and they break up and they don't end up together. Maybe they spend the rest of their lives together and they're happy and they're together, or maybe they have a family or whatever. And Lloyd figures out what he wants to do while he's in England, or whatever it might be. But I love how it ends that way, where they're on the plane, they're holding hands, and he's telling her about the whole turbulence thing, that everything is going to be okay.'t you see that light, that seatbelt light turn off, when you hear the ding, it's fine. That means you're up, you're safe, you're good. And it holds that moment for a while. And they're holding hands, they're sitting close to each other on the plane, both staring up, just waiting and waiting for everything to be okay, And then the movie goes black and you hear the ding. And I think it's a perfect way to end that movie, is that you know what? Whatever happens to them when they go to England, they're going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And that's one of the things I just really, really enjoyed about this movie, is that there wasn't a lot of cynicism in this movie. It was a simple, real love story. Great actors in it. It was an 80s teen love story movie, grown up a little bit, and just a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun. Yeah, so I think that's what I got. I'm not going to ask my own 5 questions this time, because that's kind of silly. But yeah, I just really, really enjoyed this movie. If you like John Cusack, if you like Ione, Skye, John Mahoney, this is a great one to check out. A lot of other great supporting characters too. But yeah, this is a great one to check out if you have not seen it before. So I am happy that this one is the end of our 80s movies. I'm sad that we're at the end of our 80s movies. I'm always a little bit sad that we missed all of the first half of the 80s, from 80 to 83, that we missed those movies. Maybe we'll go back and do those again sometime. I know we've talked about some of them here and there on the show, but didn't get to do those as full episodes on their own. But I am also very much looking forward to the 90s. So with the 90s coming up, our first month of next year of 2020, and again, we may take a break, may take like a week-long break or so, but we'll be back in there pretty soon, probably within the first week or two of 2020. But our first month is going to be, our theme for the month is, who does number 2 work for? Very classic Austin Powers bit. Who does number 2 work for? And it is going to be sequel movies. So there are, as I looked at it, there are a ton of sequels coming up in 1990. And so we just threw them all together in 1 month. So if you look at it, we've got, let me pull up my list here, and I'll be able to tell you exactly which ones we got coming up in which order. So we've got Die Hard 2, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, RoboCop 2, Young Guns 2, and Predator 2. So I'm sure there are other sequels. In fact, I know there's other sequels we're going to have throughout the year. We've got another 48 Hours will come up later in the year. We've got Godfather Part 3. We've got Back to the Future Part 3. Let's see, do we have any other... I was just looking real quick to see if we have any other sequels. That may be it in terms of sequels, but yeah, a lot of good stuff coming up this year. A lot of fun stuff. A lot of movies I haven't seen either, so I'm kind of excited about that too. A lot of movies I have seen, but a lot of movies I haven't seen. So really looking forward to that coming up. So thank you so much again for being with us throughout the 80s. As we move from the 80s into the 90s, I'm excited for what's ahead. We're just going to keep this thing going for as long as we can keep it going. So we'd love to have you along the ride with us. Listen along, join us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those different places. Email us, call into the voicemail line. We would love to hear from you. We're just excited to be here, and we're excited that you're here with us. So thank you so much for listening. I especially want to thank, Bo and Pat and Jeff and Dennis. Jason was another person that works with us at our school. He used to be on the show with us when we first started out. We've had a whole bunch of different guests. We've had Jason Colvin from our Oklahoma contingent has come on for a few episodes. We had Kevin Smokler, the author, came on. It was maybe about a year ago now, or a little bit earlier. This year, last year, I think it was last year maybe. And he came on, talked a little bit about 80s movies with us. And we've had a couple of other kind of guests come on the show. I think we might have had Bo's brother on here one time. I know we had Bo's wife, Donna, on here way, way back in our Breakfast Club episode. We've had, I think my sibling has been on here before. My kids have been on here before. So for anybody, and I'm sure I'm leaving somebody out, but for anybody who's joined us as either a guest host or you've called into the voicemail line or you've just listened to the show with us, thank you so much. But especially I want to give a big shout out to the other guys who are with me, a vast portion of the time. Thank you to Dennis for whenever he can show up. I know it's not always very regular, but we always appreciate. He's got a great insight on movies and just a mind for writing and the technical aspects of movies as well. Thank you to Jeff. Jeff just constantly, if you want to talk movies and you want your discussion to be taken to the next level with somebody who understands the history of movies and just has such a mind for the music and the writing and just everything all together, Jeff is the person that you want to sit down and talk with, especially Disney stuff, all in with the Disney stuff too. But, that's why I enjoy talking with the guys, just flat out excitement and movie history and knowledge, and between Bo as well, just a knowledge of some of these movies and memories surrounded the times that we've watched them or that, he watched them growing up as a kid, and just excitement about these movies. And Pat is just a ball of excited energy when it comes to most of these movies, not River's Edge, not Blue Velvet, and not some of the others, but Pat, we love you. But Pat, if you ever want just somebody to be excited with you about something, you need to talk to Pat, because he is just, I will constantly get text messages when a trailer comes out and he's like, dude, Top Gun, or more Millennium Falcon, need more Millennium Falcon. Just the excitement level. So I think what everybody that I've been on this podcast journey with brings to this is we love movies. We're positive about the movies. We're not gonna ridiculously bash something. If we didn't like it, we'll talk about it and we'll say what we didn't like about it. But we like to be positive about these movies. If for anything else, we'll try to find something to love in a movie we didn't like. But at the very least, we try to be positive about it. We try to be upbeat about it, and we try to be a movie podcast that wants to bring you in on the discussion with us. So I just want to say thank you to all those guys. You all have made this so much fun for me. This is something I had wanted to do for a really long time, and thank you for indulging me by coming in and being co-hosts on the show with me. And And this has become much more than I ever thought it would be. The fact that we are being listened to across the world, that we have people that are interacting with us, that we have, we have more than just 2 listeners. So, that has been a lot of fun for me. And I just really appreciate everybody. I appreciate the guys that are on here with me. I appreciate anybody who's ever called in, interacted with us. Teresa. I almost forgot Teresa from the Disney Vault Talk podcast, among many others. She came on with us to talk the Winnie the Pooh movie a little while back. And I know I was going to forget somebody else, but I'm sure there's others that I have completely forgotten about, and I do apologize, and that does not mean that I don't appreciate you. I absolutely appreciate you. I'm sitting in my car and now I'm starting to get really cold, so I think my brain is being affected by it. So thank you so much to everybody. I am so looking forward to the 1990 movies and what that's going to bring to us. And so I don't know if our sign off will be any different going forward, but here's the deal. I'll say it one more time, and I doubt it'll be the last time. We may stick with this going forward, but I want you all to be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies, and we will see you back here next time.